Okay, we're going to make a knit cave nest today. I'm using size 5mm double-edged knitting needles. To start, we just cast on a stitch. Place a marker so you'll know where your work begins. And another stitch. Take another needle. Add 2 stitches to this needle. Another needle. They want to go for a spin. Add 2 stitches to this needle. Now we join in the round. And because of the marker, we know where we started. At the end of this video, we'll have the pattern and all the sizes and everything, so if you miss it, it'll be at the end. So on the next round, on the first round, we knit a stitch, move the marker, add a stitch. I just make a loop and put it over the needle. It's easy that way, but if you find an easier way, go for it. Knit another stitch and add a stitch. Now we have 4 stitches on this needle. We do the same on the next needle. With each row, you increase 1 stitch in between each cast on stitch. There's the second one. Cast on the stitch. At the beginning it seems like it's all needle and no yarn, but it'll fill up quickly. Okay, on the third needle, knit a stitch, add a stitch, knit a stitch, add a stitch. Now there's 12 stitches altogether, 4 on each needle. On the next round, it's knit a stitch, knit another stitch. This is the second stitch, is the one you cast off on the last row. Now cast on the stitch, and then knit 2, cast on. Keep on in this manner, adding a stitch in each row. Okay, at this point you should have 14 stitches on each needle. On the next row, I'm going to start adding needles. Now the needles I'm using are only 7 inches long, so it won't hold a lot of stitches before they start falling off the end. But if you have long needles that will hold 28 stitches and you want to use them, go ahead. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the cast on stitch from last time. 7. Add a stitch. Now I'm going to start another needle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So then we just keep on adding stitches all the way around and putting half on each stitch. I'm using black and white yarn because it's a good contrast color. It's easier to see the individual stitches. Use whatever colors you have on hand. Okay, this is the last needle that I've ended with. So that's 5, 6, 7, and a stitch. The work gets really tight, but you want to keep it tight so that no little critters will get their claws or toenails or beaks or whatever caught in it. So that's what it's starting to look like. We have the 6 needles. We're getting a little design. That's because we're increasing on each row, so you'll end up with a pinwheel on the bottom. So you just continue around, add 1 stitch at the end of each row. Now you don't have to count stitches because you know that once you've knitted all the stitches on that row, you add a stitch. So you don't have to count anymore. And you'll end up with a total of 14 stitches on the 6 needles. Okay, now you should have 14 stitches on 6 needles for a total of 84 stitches. It's a good idea to get into the habit of counting your stitches every couple of rows. That way, if you forgot to add a stitch on one row, you could always sneak it in on the next row, somewhere in the middle. The little animals that are going to be having these for homes aren't going to mind that there's a stitch in the middle of a row. They'll just be happy to have the home. So just keep on knitting now for 8 rows. You've put all your stitches in. You don't have to add any more unless you want to make the nest bigger. At this point, you add your stitches. But right now with this one, we're just going to knit 8 rows, 8 rounds, and then we'll start to cast off. So I've knit the 8 rounds. This is what your work should look like. You get some interesting designs with 2 different colors of thread, yarn rather. Now we're going to decrease some stitches to make the opening. So the way I cast off is knit a stitch. You can take your marker off now. Knit another stitch. Put the first stitch over. It is tight. Knit another stitch. Keep your yarn needle in there. Cast off another stitch. Keep on doing this till you've cast off 14 stitches. And then knit the next, and knit around the end of the row. Okay. Okay, we're at the end of that row. So I cast off the 14 stitches, and now I have 5 needles, each with 14 stitches. So the next row is going to be purl a row. So now what we do with the opening is we purl a row, then knit a row. You do that for 13 rows, ending with a knit row. So just keep on knitting, purling rather, all the way around. And then on the next row you knit, and the row after that you purl. Keep on for 13 rows. Just as a little hint, sometimes the tip of your finger will get sore for pushing the needle in. And the best thing I've found for that, believe it or not, is electrical tape. It's thin, it'll stick to your finger good, and there's usually some around the house somewhere. So just keep on purling this row, and for 13 rows, purl and then knit a row. Okay, we're coming to the end here. This is how it's starting to look. If you like, if you find it easier, you can use the circular needle as long as it's 5mm, and it'll need to be about at least 16 inches long. So we just keep on continuing on till we get our 13 rows done. Okay, so up to this point, I knit and purled for 13 rows. Then I knit this row. Now what we're going to do is cast back on the 14 stitches we cast off before. This is going to be the top of the opening. And the way I find the easiest is just to loop it on like I did before. 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then what we're going to do is knit 4 rows. Now you won't need a marker from now on because this part is going to be the end of your row. So the beginning of the opening here is the start of a new round. And if you did change to using a circular needle, this would be a good time to change back to the pointed needles. So just knit plain 4 row rounds. And it doesn't pull up, of course. Here we go. Okay, so we're getting to the end of the 4th knit round. So now we're going to start decreasing. So in the first round, it's knit 12, knit 2 together, all the way around. One good thing about having your work on 6 needles like this is you don't have to count your stitches. Just remember to knit the last 2 stitches on each needle. So there's 12, knit 2 together, continue all the way around. Then on the next round, it's knit 11, knit 2 together. The next one, knit 10, knit 2 together, all the way around. Keep on decreasing in that manner. Okay, at this point in the work, I have 7 stitches on each needle. Now's the time I start decreasing the number of needles that I'm using. So we'll knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 2 together. Then with the same needle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 2 together. So now there's 12 stitches on this needle. Do the same again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knit 2 together. Two, 3, 4, 5, 2 together, and put the stitches from the last 2 needles on one needle and keep decreasing. Now you'll have to count between your stitches, your knit 2 together stitches. The next round will be 4 and then 3, and then 2. Okay, now we're down to 1 stitch, knit 2 together, 1 stitch, 2 together. Now we have 4 stitches on each needle, so now we just knit 2 together all the way around. So there's 1, 2, when I started taking the needles away, if you want to keep on with the 6 needles, do it. Do whatever's comfortable for you. It's one thing about knitting. Okay, and the final one. Now we're back to the 2 stitches on each needle. Now it's time to tie it off. We're finished knitting. You need a needle with a big eye because there's 2 strands of yarn to go through. So thread it through each loop. Pull it tight. Now I always go through a few more loops again. Then put it through the hole there, or stick it through the work to the wrong side. And tie it off. Then thread it through a couple loops. That'll keep little toes or claws from getting caught. Cut it close to the work, being careful not to cut your work. Then we do the same to the bottom. So if there's any hole there, you can just sew it shut. And then tie it off again, making sure it's tight. Thread this side through a few loops, stitches, whatever you call them. And cut this one off. And you've finished your nest. You have a pretty pinwheel pattern on the bottom and on the top. When it's finished, you really can't tell which is the top or the bottom. You'll end up with a nice little home for birds or baby weasels or rabbits or chipmunks, squirrels, whatever. There you go. If you have any questions or if there's anything that's not clear enough, just let me know and I'll help if I can. Thank you, and have fun with your knitting.